Hi, honey.
So good to see you.
Wow.
Wow.
What a journey, huh?
In our lifetimes.
Amazing. I know.
For this interview, I have no plan. We might end up just, looking at each other and smiling and just saying nothing. Who knows?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. But I don't even know what to ask, but I am curious about your point of view, what we can dig out of it, explore, make out of it, try to make out of it. We'll see. Okay.
Great.
I'm going to do a quick introduction so people know who you are. So I'm talking to Sarah Marshank, who is a very dear friend of mine. And this is the first thing I want to say about you. And she's a spiritual teacher. She is a creator of Self-Esteem, a system that helps women to really look deep inside and discover who they really are, discover their authenticity, discover how they want to live. You work mostly with women, right, Sarah? Yeah.
Mostly, but it's men as well. More and more men coming. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked your description, your self-description on your website. So I'm gonna introduce you this way because it's kind of interesting. Okay, so Sarah is a woman who lived many lives: college student, lover, Orthodox Jew, escort, celibate monk, truth seeker, recluse. A friend of mine also. Sarah lives in California. We talk to each other every so often, every few months. The last time we spoke to each other was a month ago. Didn't even mention coronavirus. Now we are waking up in a new reality, and I am so happy to talk to you and see, how have you been in this whole thing?
Well, I would say, there's been ups and downs, I think, for all of us. I think that, as you mentioned earlier, it came in a way so fast, so sudden and so dramatic. And at the same time, it just kind of crept up on us. It came in slow and easy and smooth. And so I think we're all kind of managing a whole range of reactions and responses. For me, in a crisis, I tend to go deeply in and just ground. And from there, assess what's going on out in the world and how to respond to that. So that's my natural impulse, and maybe those 10 years in retreat really reinforce that. And so I've been very inward and grounded, and yet I notice that as I look out into the world and into my own human story, I feel very more concerned than I do excited. So I feel a range because here's a huge disruption, as you said earlier, to our entire human species. This is something, if history makes it, they'll look back on this and go, oh, that was the pandemic of 2020 when blah, 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 and blah, 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 and it changed everything or changed nothing,
Yeah.
But right. But so to really recognize that and to feel into that is exciting, the possibility of what might come, but also very scary and concerning about what might come. So I think I'm more in the spectrum of concern when you ask my human heart how she's doing. But my ground, what you might call my soul, feels solid and willing and curious.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start from the bad end of it. What are you concerned about?
Oh gosh, I would say there's concern more than anything about humans in general not having that capacity that I just spoke to. Mm-hmm. And so the loss, whether it's in death of themselves or their loved ones, or loss of financial, economic stability, loss of a home, loss of a career, loss of a future, all of those things, I have concern that we're not really equipped enough as a global family to take care of each other and create something maybe more sustaining, maybe more equitable, maybe even more fun. So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, you know what why I'm smiling at this? And maybe it's just my overly optimistic self-talking, because maybe that's just my defense mechanism here. But I'm listening to you and I'm like, okay, so you're saying that Mother Earth does not know what she's doing, that she is not doing this thing at the right time, that maybe we are not capable of receiving it and transforming with it at this time. I don't know, but I'm thinking that maybe we are.
So here's the thing, that's one way. We're all going to tell a story about this, right?
Yeah, so, there's a narration going on.
And we do that. That's what humans do beautifully. So the story that Mother Earth is doing this at the right time, right, is a beautiful story. And for me, I don't know Mother Earth's story. I don't know what her intent is, if she even has an intent, if she's even a she, but I do know that historically, if you look and study history, right, whether there's always been, so we're dealing with climate change as well. There's always been climate migrations, right? All throughout history, there's been empires rising and empires falling, and so humans finding their way and nature finding their way in this kind of collaborative process. So what I would say, how I would narrate what you just said is it's happening, and it will grow that capacity in us. It has to. And either we will grow or we won't. My concern is that if we could only have grown up a little bit more before the shit hit the fan, I would feel more optimistic.
I know.
But I honestly don't know. I really don't know.
I know. And I appreciate you saying about this. I don't know if she is even a woman. I don't know if Mother Earth, I don't either. I just choose maybe to believe it at this time because it's helping me. But it's kind of interesting how it really puts us like face to face with our stories, with the narration, with what's true, what's not, with God forbid it's not true, that God knows what he or she or it is doing. It's interesting. I'm observing all of those emotions and feelings and mental states in me, and I'm just, I'm laughing most of the time at myself with it.
Yeah, and you and I know that to have that capacity to observe our thoughts and our beliefs, like we believe them on one level, but we also have this capacity to get curious about them and wonder, and at least identify them as stories and not necessarily as true. And so we can have this kind of playful relationship with ourselves. But imagine if you were really believing fully the story that, for example, your life has no value unless you can provide for your family. And then this pandemic comes and you lose your job. And there's no vision of what's next, and your family starts not being able to eat, right? So that story, if that person can't step back and say, okay, I see that's a story, it also has some truth to it because I'm actually not working and my children are hungry. So it's not just a story, but the story that my worth, right, is dependent on that is a story. And so that person with a little bit of distance might be able to go, wow, I'm really freaking out. I'm really scared. And I'm curious about what's the way through. And the not knowing, somebody recently, I had another woman interview me a week ago, and she asked me, it was such a beautiful question, because her whole brand and her whole work and her whole storytelling is about belonging. And she said, how do we belong right now? What do we belong in? And I said, for me, the belonging is in coming together and not knowing together. So living in the uncertainty together is possibly what will force the growth or invite the growth of our capacity to innovate out of not knowing.
This is so interesting. Thank you for saying this, because it summarizes it in a perfect way. We are together in not knowing globally. I mean, nobody knows. The politicians don't know. Mr. Trump doesn't know.
Definitely does not know.
Nobody knows how it's going to end, what to do. We can make predictions, but we've never lived through anything like this. You know, we've lived through 9/11 or through martial law in Poland, but it's just so not comparable to what's going on right now. And I like that. I mean, I'm enjoying this not knowing globally, you know. Right now when I'm calling anybody, it's just like, you know, we don't know. And there's like, and it's something so unifying about it, you know?
Well, this is the first time in human history that we're having a global experience and we're able to do things like this. You're in Poland, I'm in the US, and we're having this meaningful conversation to try and make meaning out of what's happening, and also to connect in the, oh my God, isn't this amazing? It's actually quite stunning that it's happening this way. And for you, because of your beautiful, curious, you know, basically, essentially joyful nature, for you, it's exciting.
It is.
But for many people, it's incredibly scary to not know. You and I enjoy not knowing. Many people, it terrifies them to not know, and they're looking to the experts. And like you said, the experts don't know. The epidemiologists don't know.
No.
The World Health Organization doesn't know. The leaders of countries don't know. Doctors on site don't know. Nobody knows. It's truly a radical disruption of entire way of life, and none of us know how it's going to.
But it's so beautiful at the same time that we are thrown out of this knowing, because we have been inserted in our own created stories about how life is, you know, what was before, what's going to happen. And when we were all, you know, settled in, and now all of a sudden everything went out the window. And yeah, beautiful. What are you excited about though? Like, okay, so let's go to that, you know, optimistic end. Why do you like it in a way?
So, beautiful question. I would say for me, what's exciting about it is I'll start for me personally, is the curiosity about how I, as one little individual, can engage or show up for this innovation that I mentioned earlier, which is because what you just said is really interesting, that we're so habituated to knowing and our own narratives and how we're running our life, and I'm going to do this and make this such money and then retire and have grandchildren and blah. And that way of life was not sustainable for the planet. So going back to our relationship with nature, clearly not sustainable. I mean, we've been saying this now for decades, right? So here we are at this crisis point where we have the opportunity to really like stop for a moment and go, do I really need all this stuff? You know, do I really need to become a billionaire? Do I really want to become famous? Do I really need to lose those 20 pounds? Like, what's really important? And that's exciting to me, to be together in that inquiry, like what's really important to you and what are you willing to let go of in order to make room for something new to emerge. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. My question is, does it awake in you anything new? Like, for example, your approach to your teachings, to how to help the world, how to give your energy to the world?
Not yet. It hasn't. I mean, I'm curious about it. I have had little peaks and little, you know, peaks meaning like, you know, I can see maybe my work will go there, maybe it'll go there. But right now it's full on uncertainty, which is, again, we can't rush to get to certainty because it's emergent. Mm-hmm. We can't force it. We can't. So I have, you know, like ideas, well, maybe I'll do more, you know, consulting work now, or maybe I'll do more one-on-one, or maybe I won't even be doing this work at all anymore. And maybe I will become a gardener, and maybe I will die from this. Maybe I will so there's so many maybes swirling around. I really, really am in the moment, living day to day. Who are the clients I'm seeing today? Because a lot of my work is online. what do I want to offer? What do I want to say? What do I want to write? Do I even want to say anything? Do I want to say yes to my beloved dear friend Margosha saying, talk to me, Sarah? Do I have a yes for that? So I'm really listening more and more in the moment. And I do that all the time, but I feel like it's more heightened from what do I want to eat for breakfast to do I want to turn on the news? I'm just more awake and attentive to the choices I'm making and listening for signs or invitations or inspirations that are happening in my field. Maybe that answers your question a little more.
I love it, actually, because I was curious about your personal perspective on it. Like you are a spiritual teacher, and your personal perspective on what's going on how you react to it, what it wakes up in you. For me, that's very valuable. I think what you're saying resonates with so many people that all of a sudden we are faced with this uncertainty and just not knowing anything. And how does it make you feel? Because you don't feel very distressed by it. Like you don't look like. So what helps you to be not distressed and curious about it?
That's a beautiful question. I was on my walk this morning and thinking about that, because here's the thing. Life is never certain. We're always living in uncertainty, but when things are going, more or less habitually or in order or undisrupted, we could say, then we start to believe that we really know that we're going to wake up tomorrow and go to work and feed our kids and blah, blah, blah. So this kind of large scale disruption to systems and governments and organizations, and then trickle down to those of us that are sheltered in our homes or on quarantine. It's radical, it's unprecedented, and again, what we said earlier, it's scary and it's exciting. So what I heard you ask me was, so then how, Sarah, because you feel fairly calm about the excitement of living in uncertainty, how do you get there? How do you do that? How do you cultivate that calm? So meditation for me has been the way, and I say meditation, I'm going to put it in quotes because it's not just a 10-minute or 1 hour practice every day. It's a way of life. It's a whole perspective on life and a way of knowing who we are as humans and who we are as the unknowable mystery. And so what I'm thinking of writing about, what I was planning to write about today for a blog was, this is actually a great opportunity to learn how to meditate because you don't have another choice. Yeah. And what that means is what we said earlier, what you and I said, which is if we can practice to just take a deep breath and be in this present moment right here, right now, and notice all of the thoughts and beliefs and stories that we're telling ourselves. Now they're way more heightened now because of the uncertainty. So you'll notice maybe you have a thought of, well, tomorrow, then all of those tests will be coming to our city and then I'll be okay. Or well, like what you said earlier, you might notice, oh, this is Mother Gaia coming to wake us up. Oh, that's what's happening. Or you might go, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. I'm sure that the Chinese have done this to get, world hegemony. So there's all these stories, and yet nobody knows which one of those, if any of them, are true, like for real. So the practice is to come back to your breath. Yeah. Right now, just right here. What do I know? Margosha sitting in front of me on the screen. I have a cup of hot water. I had breakfast this morning. I'm breathing. Now it sounds very simple, and on a certain level it sounds like, oh, Sarah, please. How's that going to help anything, And
so
the answer is,
how is it going to help anything?
How is it going to help it? You tell me. How do you think it's going to help anything?
I don't know how to explain it, how to put it into words. But when we were living in a certainty, we were living in a story of, and we created a story that's not necessarily so good for us and for our planet and for the humankind and for the animal kind and so on, really. So right now, when we are thrown out of this and we are sitting without a story, I mean, I feel that, you know, this situation kind of like throws us into a meditative state in a way, because we have no, I mean, the story is just crumbling down in front of us. I don't want to plan, you know, creating a new story of like, okay, this is true, this is Gaia, or we are that, or the Chinese, or the Trump, or whatever, because it doesn't really matter, you know. It doesn't matter who created this and what's the cause of it. What matters is that we are here now, that we can, I mean, this moment, all of a sudden, this moment starts mattering much more, you know. So what are, you know, how can we, quote unquote, help, if anybody needs help with this, our listeners or viewers? How can we invite them to this meditation practice or any kind of like spiritual practice that helps them go through, not only in peace and quiet, but also in I don't know if I want to say appreciation of it, but getting what's really valuable out of this and really being in this whole transition? What would you say?
Well, first of all, when you said that this can throw people into meditative state, I would say that that is true for some people. That's the opportunity, but it's not going to happen automatically. Or if it does, it doesn't necessarily mean that people know what's happening and can actually metabolize it. Because for many people, it's throwing them into a state of panic or shock, right? So what I would say for people is, first of all, number one, be willing to have conversations like this. Why? Because we start to, in understanding or trying to make meaning of what's happening without putting a story on it. So we don't want to lock it down in the old way. What we want to do is actually really lean into right now, but to be able to talk about it in a way that can help us be in right relationship with our stories and our emotions. So for you and I, because we have meditation practices, the breath brings us right back into the present moment and the wonder that's right here, right? I had somebody send me a meme this morning, and it said, I opened 2 presents this morning. They were my eyes. Right? So there's this recognition of like, wow. And I wrote that in my note this week. It's like, wow, we're alive. Like that's period. Like that is just a holy miracle. I mean, what do we want to do with this? It is kind of like a fresh start. But in order to access that excitement that you're talking about and that wonder, we need to pull our attention out of our fear and out of our desperation to nail down a story so that we can feel secure.
Yeah.
And so it's pulling ourselves away from that. And one way we do that is with each other and talking about it and trying to understand that those are stories and those are feelings. Now you have them in your nervous system. You may be firing so much adrenaline right now that you feel like your head's going to blow off. Okay, take a deep breath. Now go run around the block and get some of that steam off, and then come back here and let's talk about your fear. Let's talk about your story about your fear. Let's try to, so I'm very much the kind of teacher that says, let's understand, let's use our minds, and you don't have to have an IQ. This is not rocket science. This is very simple human understanding of being in right relationship with our emotions, our stories, and with what's actually really here. Mm-hmm. So coming together and having conversations, not to feed the fear and the story, but to come to the present moment and reflect on our fears and our stories so that we can actually be in the moment and see what's here and what's needed and what's being called forth from us fresh in this moment.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Because I know that you do individual coaching also, you work with clients. How would you work with a client right now? Like, for example, if I were your client and I said, okay, in this time I feel very disrupted, I feel uncertain, I feel just thrown out of my orbit right now.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to deal with. What would you suggest? What questions would you ask me?
So if you were a client of mine, you would already be somewhat familiar with the sophistry map or the sophistry system. So let's pretend you don't know that map at all. Let's say you're just coming to me and you're saying, Sarah, help, I'm distressed, I'm freaking out. Yeah. So I would say to you, tell me about the freaking out. Who's freaking out? I would say, which Margosha is freaking out? Let me hear from her. What's she scared of? Let me talk to her. And I would have a conversation with her, and I wouldn't try. The first thing I would not do, and I had a friend reach out to me the other day regarding her child who was having night terrors and horrible dreams, and she was like, what do I do? And there were people that were suggesting, well, give him rescue remedy and melatonin and help him sleep better. And I said, that's all fine, right? Mm-hmm. But here's what I suggest you do, which is hold him when he wakes up in the middle of the night, and you just sit and hold him, and do not tell him everything is going to be okay, because you do not know that. Do not lie to him, but tell him right now he's okay. Okay. So, and then in the morning, you take a look at how much media he's listening to, and you as a family sit down together and have a meaningful conversation, right? Which includes, optimism and concern, both of them, because they're both in the field and that child is picking up on them. So for you, if you were to come with me with this distress, I would do the same approach. I would say, tell me about it, sweetie. I want to know. And then I would help you step back from that self, that one that's freaking out. Now, she may not be able to do that with a 9-year-old child, not yet, but she can energetically model it for him. So first thing you do is you meet the fear, you meet the one that's scared, and you hold them and you help them regulate their nervous system, because their nervous system is freaking them out about something that's not yet here. Okay. So you help them regulate, and this is the practice that you do internally with yourself. And then you talk to the one that's able to be aware that you have one inside of you freaking out, and you get curious, well, who's that one that's aware? Like, which Margaret is aware of the one I want to talk to that one. And then we start to develop a relationship. In sophistry, we call that one the witness, the one that's able to observe everything else. Mm-hmm. And we develop a relationship with her, and we help her ground into not knowing, and to just be aware of all of the selves, all of the Sarahs and all the Margoshas that want to tell the story and nail it down and need security. And we let them be. We don't make them wrong, and we don't get rid of them. We listen. And then we center ourselves using the breath, which is the key in most spiritual, mystical, and even psychological tools. Is the breath is the ultimate regulator. So we come back to the present moment. We're breathing because we're actually being breathed instead of breathing. And we let the breath breathe us. And then the next piece would be exploring what is the breath breathing us. And that's the realm of the mystery, where we start to lean in, where uncertainty is eternal, right? There is no certainty there, no human certainty. And so then we start to, and that might be what you would call the more spiritual aspect of it, because it's really opening up again to God or to truth or to the unknowable or to source, whatever name, and removing the names, because those are just stories, and turning towards a real present moment engagement with that mystery, and then listening from there. Who am I? What is this whole thing about?
Yeah. Yeah, so if I can kind of like summarize it in a nutshell of what I heard is, when you have emotions, fears coming up, recognize the part of you that's afraid, that is saying all of those things, that's panicking or whatever you're dealing with, basically. Just recognize that it's not the whole you, but a part of you that's doing this. Don't argue with it, don't fight with it, or don't try to reconcile it, no matter what, like, oh, it's gonna be all fine. Treat it as a child of yours that you can hold, you can hug, and you can say, okay, I feel you, I hear you, I understand you, right? And see also, this is such a great opportunity for us, because we are all going to be going through all kinds of emotions right now and meeting ourselves here, to distance other parts of ourselves from that scared part and recognize that we also have those other parts, and start getting some distance to the selves that live within us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that it's not just the scared selves, but it's the excited selves. We want also to just have perspective on, because what can happen is the excited selves could start taking over and running the show, and it may not turn out that great for any of us, right? So what we want to do is really be in the present moment, which is initially, it's uncomfortable. And I suggest to us, it's uncomfortable because it's unknown more than it's really that uncomfortable. So also, let me say that again in another way. To actually be in the uncertainty and be present in this moment is uncomfortable because we're very habituated to being in the past or the future. Right? We just are. It's our conditioning, and it's how we survive as a species. And we miss the present moment, right? So what this radical disruption is inviting us to do. Now, there are many people that are locked up in their houses still in the past and in the future, and not really here, being locked up in their houses. But the opportunity is to just really just stop and just be right here, using the breath as the anchor or as the guide to being right here, noticing all of our thoughts and beliefs and stories and fears and anxieties and plans for the future, and then just continue to be right here, to be right here. Now remember, those are not going to disappear, so that they're going to be like in the background noise, is how I say it, right? They just kind of float to the background. You can be right here. Both are always going to be happening simultaneously. Bring your attention here. You'll still have awareness here, and then start, sniffing around right here and getting curious of like, what's here in this moment?
Yeah. Oh, my tea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my tea.
Oh, so simple.
Thank you for this, because when you were talking, I recognized the pattern that I am creating as my reaction to the crisis, quote unquote. I don't like to call it crisis, really, because it's so many things, besides being crisis. But my reaction personally, and in business and in here at home, was kind of like, I guess maybe that's the story that I'm building also, is to get excited about it. I mean, that's kind of like my natural way of reacting. It's like to get excited. It's like, okay, we've been waiting for it in a way. Yeah, I didn't know that it's gonna come this way. I was actually, advising the universe to conduct it in a different way, but okay, the universe always wants to have a say in it. So I'm excited about it. All of a sudden I have so much work. All of a sudden I have like so many ideas. All of a sudden I'm so prolific. It's just like, all of a sudden I'm like opening like, and I'm not even thinking about business or like making money with this. It's kind of like, yes, I could give this. Yes, I can connect with this. Yes, I can talk to Sarah about it. Yeah, there's just, and now when I'm talking to you, I'm kind of questioning, it's like, okay, is it maybe an artificial excitement that helps me survive this, and it's a defense mechanism? Very possible. Or is it a genuine, authentic power, energy that's just fueling me in this situation? So I have some inquiries to do here about it, because I don't want to be misled with it. And I don't want to miss what you were saying is, jump into this future and planning and, it's going to be so great. And miss that present moment and the present opportunity that's in front of us right now.
So beautiful. So beautiful. And what I do know for sure, after, being on this journey and focused on this particular way of knowing ourselves now for over 30 years, is that the question you just asked, is this authentic, really emergent in the moment, or is this operating system, or fear-based habitual operating, that will become so clear as you toggle, as you spend time getting to know those selves, so the one that has all these plans, and resting in the present moment and surrendering into the field of the unknown, which is where these new fresh springs come from. You will know, is this a fresh spring coming through me? Or is this an old, top-down approach to managing my stress and my anxiety? You'll know. I already have a sense of it because I know you, but I'm not going to tell you.
What is it? What is it? Because I don't want to spend hours in meditation. If you can just tell me.
I would say it's both.
It's both, yeah.
I would say it's both.
I think so. I think, when you said it, it felt very right. Thank you for saying this, because I feel so invited, so much more invited right now to actually sit down for longer periods of time right now, and just, not to force myself into meditation, but to really put the stories aside, sit down, put the stories aside, and not be afraid to be without a story.
Oh, gorgeous. And to tell you, and to let your listeners know, sitting down in meditation to do that is one way. It's one of my teachers is Zen Roshi. It's so beautiful. She talks about the dignity of taking our seat. There's such a history of the power of sitting still and aligning, our spine or our chakras or our energy systems or our endocrine system, whatever you want to call it. But for you, also knowing you, that might come, which is why it's so important to understand what we're trying to do here on some level. That might come when you're doing your walk in nature every day. That your attention from your soul. Now, sometimes I'm a walker too, so sometimes the walk gets me all into myself and my plans and my excitement. It's really helpful for that, and there's time and place, of course, for that. But sometimes it can just be by moving my body and focusing on my body. There's this connection to my breath, the stories and the voices and the planning kind of recede into the background, and then you can sit down next to a tree or lie down on the grass and just deepen into the stillness and the silence and the not knowing, and just see what happens.
I'm okay with whatever comes out of it. Well, maybe I will be a little disappointed if we don't pass the mark, but I feel that we might be ready for it. I feel, and of course, this is another story. I'm kind of married to the Mother Earth story, okay? So just bear with me. But I feel that, that okay, in the era of climate change, when we are destroying the earth so quickly here, and before it destroys us completely because of this, the Mother Earth, being a good mother, says, okay, listen, time out, stay at home, do nothing, you can't do nothing now, stay at home, sit in your room, and we will see how you're gonna come out of it, okay? And then you're gonna come out and tell me, what you have thought about, okay? If you're sorry.
Okay, so let me take this because I like this story. I'm gonna add one potential little tweak to it because you're a mom and you've probably, given your kids time out. What I'm gonna suggest is that during the timeout, which is exactly what you and I are doing right now, instead of putting the child on timeout and letting them figure it out for themselves and come back and report probably, what they think you want to hear so they can get out of their timeout and go back to doing what they were doing before.
Oh, God, is that good for me,
Right?
You saw right through me.
I saw right through you. You go in there in that timeout with that kid and you meet them in the timeout. So that is a metaphor, is exquisite. And so let's meet each other in timeout, and let's meet her, right? So if it's Mother Nature is the mother that's giving us a timeout, let's really feel her while we're in timeout, and let's be in timeout together and look together. What are we doing?
That is so powerful. That is so bigger.
Oh.
We are in it together with the Mother Earth, with the nature, and not as polarities of like, okay, she against us and we are the children. Thank you for this. Thank you for destroying that beautiful story of mine.
Cool. It's a beautiful story. I love it. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much for talking to me, for reminding me that my excitement could be a story also, for inviting me to actually, sit down, look within, not be afraid to be without a story. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
much.